Ruth chapter 4. Then went Boaz up to the gate, and sat him down there, and behold, the kinsman of whom Boaz spake came by, unto whom he said, Ho, such a one, turn aside, sit down here. And he turned aside, and sat down. And he took 10 men of the elders of the city, and said, Sit ye down here. And they sat down. And he said unto the kinsman, Naomi, that is come again out of the country of Moab, selleth a parcel of land, which was our brother Elimelech's. And I thought to advertise thee, saying, Buy it before the inhabitants, and before the elders of my people. If thou wilt redeem it, but if thou wilt not redeem it, then tell me, that I may know. For there is none to redeem it beside thee, and I am after thee. And he said, I will redeem it. Then said Boaz, What day thou buyest the field of the hand of Naomi, thou must buy it also of Ruth the Moabitess, the wife of the dead, to raise up the name of the dead upon his inheritance. And the kinsman said, I cannot redeem it for myself, lest I mar mine own inheritance. Redeem thou my right to thyself, for I cannot redeem it. Now this was the manner in former time in Israel concerning redeeming and concerning changing, for to confirm all things. A man plucked off his shoe and gave it to his neighbor, and this was a testimony in Israel. Therefore the kinsman said unto Boaz, Buy it for thee. So he drew off his shoe. And Boaz said unto the elders and to all the people, Ye are witnesses this day that I have bought all that was Elimelech's, and all that was Kilion's and Mahlon's of the hand of Naomi. Moreover, Ruth the Moabitess, the wife of Mahlon, have I purchased to be my wife, to raise up the name of the dead upon his inheritance, that the name of the dead be not cut off from among his brethren, and from the gate of his place. Ye are witnesses this day. And all the people that were in the gate and the elders said, We are witnesses. The Lord make the woman that is come into thine house like Rachel and like Leah, which two did build the house of Israel. And do thou worthily in Ephratah, and be famous in Bethlehem. And let thy house be like the house of Pharez, whom Tamar bare unto Judah, of the seed which the Lord shall give thee of this young woman. So Boaz took Ruth, and she was his wife, and when he went in unto her, the Lord gave her conception, and she bare a son. And the women said unto Naomi, Blessed be the Lord, which hath not left thee this day without a kinsman, that his name may be famous in Israel. And he shall be unto thee a restorer of thy life, and a nourisher of thine old age, for thy daughter-in-law, which loveth thee, which is better to thee than 7 sons, hath borne him. And Naomi took the child, and laid it in her bosom, and became nurse unto it. And the women, her neighbors, gave it a name, saying, There is a son born to Naomi. And they called his name Obed. And he is the father of Jesse, the father of David. Now these are the generations of Pharez. Pharez begat Hezron, and Hezron begat Ram, and Ram begat Amminadab. And Amminadab begat Nahshon, Nahshon begat Salmon, Salmon begat Boaz, and Boaz begat Obed, and Obed begat Jesse, and Jesse begat David. And that is chapter 4 of the book of Ruth. So before we get started on verse by verse, let's go back and read Deuteronomy 25 again. We've read this in every chapter, but it's important to know the law of being a kinsman redeemer. It's so important for this story. So Deuteronomy 25 verses 5 and 6. If brethren dwell together, and one of them die, and have no child, the wife of the dead shall not marry without unto a stranger. Her husband's brother shall go in unto her, and take her to him to wife, and perform the duty of a husband's brother unto her. And it shall be that the firstborn which she beareth shall succeed in the name of his brother which is dead, that his name be not put out of Israel. So, chapter 4, verse 1. Then went Boaz up to the gate, and sat him down there, and behold, the kinsman of whom Boaz spake came by, unto whom he said, Ho, such a one, turn aside, sit down here. And he turned aside and sat down. So this is Boaz waiting at the gate for the man who is a closer kinsman than he is. So this man that Boaz is waiting for, he legally has the first claim to Naomi's land and to marry Ruth. He is a closer kinsman than Boaz is. So Boaz is waiting at the gate for him. And the gate of the city was like an outdoor court. So this is where you went for public meetings, business meetings, and where the men of the city sat. And if we look at the last chapter, in Ruth chapter 3, Boaz calls Ruth a virtuous woman. And we talked about in Proverbs 31 what a virtuous woman was. It was verses 10 through 31. in Proverbs 31. Talks about a virtuous woman. So Proverbs 31:23 says, her husband is known in the gates when he sitteth among the elders of the land. So I just love how that all tied together, how Boaz says Ruth is a virtuous woman. Proverbs 31 talks about what a virtuous woman is, and Proverbs 31:23 talks about her husband is known in the gates. And then here we have Boaz sitting at the gates. So I just love how it kind of tied together there. Verse 2 says, and he took 10 men of the elders of the city and said, sit ye down here. And they sat down. So this was just wise that Boaz had elders of the city to be witnesses for this important business deal. Verses 3 and 4 I'm going to read together. And he said unto the kinsman, Naomi, that is come again out of the country of Moab, selleth a parcel of land which was our brother Elimelech's. And I thought to advertise thee, saying, buy it before the inhabitants, and before the elders of my people. If thou wilt redeem it, redeem it. But if thou wilt not redeem it, then tell me, that I may know. For there is none to redeem it beside thee, and I am after thee. And he said, I will redeem it. So Boaz is explaining that Naomi is selling the land that belonged to their relative Elimelech's. And whenever he says our brother Elimelech's, it just means our relative Elimelech. And he tells him, if you don't redeem it, then I will. Now, he only mentions the land. He hasn't mentioned anything about Ruth yet. But the man says that he will redeem it. Now, something that we talked about in the women's meeting, we were wondering if Naomi and Ruth were anywhere close by trying to listen in, or maybe watching the transaction from afar. And we think it's probably possible that they were watching from a distance to see what would happen, because to Boaz and Ruth, this isn't just a business deal. This was important. We see in the previous chapters that they have grown to respect one another, to love one another. They had a fondness for each other. And it was really important because Ruth went to Boaz. She wants him to be the kinsman redeemer, and Boaz wants to be that kinsman redeemer. So it's probably likely that Ruth and Naomi were there watching, at least from a distance maybe, to see what was going on. So verse 5 says, then said Boaz, what day thou buyest the field of the hand of Naomi, thou must buy also of Ruth the Moabitess, the wife of the dead, to raise up the name of the dead upon his inheritance. Now the NLT version of that verse says, then Boaz told him, of course, your purchase of the land from Naomi also requires that you marry Ruth, the Moabite widow. That way she can have children who will carry on her husband's name and keep the land in the family. So, as we read in Deuteronomy, a kinsman redeemer, if this man marries Ruth, their son that they have together will be carrying on Mahlon's name, so Ruth's deceased husband, and whatever land, it is given to that son. So this kinsman, if he marries Ruth and has a child with her, he doesn't get that land that he was at first wanting to redeem. It actually belongs to the son that they would have in the name of Ruth's dead husband. So that probably changes things. As we see in verse 6, and the kinsman said, I cannot redeem it for myself, lest I mar mine own inheritance. Redeem thou my right to thyself, for I cannot redeem it. So now he's saying that he cannot redeem this land because it would put a danger to his own inheritance. So most people believe that this man was already married with children. And to marry Ruth and buy the land when it wouldn't legally belong to him, it would belong to the child that they would have. That would take away from him. He would be putting money out buying land when he would actually be getting nothing in return. And, he probably didn't want another wife either if he was already married and had children. It would just really, be a danger to his inheritance that he would be leaving for his children. So he tells Boaz, I cannot redeem this land now. Verses 7 and 8. Now this was the manner in former time in Israel concerning redeeming and concerning changing. For to confirm all things, a man plucked off his shoe and gave it to his neighbor, and this was a testimony in Israel. Therefore the kinsman said unto Boaz, buy it for thee. So he drew off his shoe. Now that's a very strange couple of verses to say, that they made a deal and he took his shoe off. But if we go over to Deuteronomy 25, remember we just read that at the beginning of this. If we go to verses 7 through 10. And if the man like not to take his brother's wife, then let his brother's wife go up to the gate unto the elders, and say, my husband's brother refuseth to raise up unto his brother a name in Israel. He will not perform the duty of my husband's brother. Then the elders of his city shall call him, and speak unto him, and if he stand to it, and say, I like not to take her, then shall his brother's wife come unto him in the presence of the elders, and loose his shoe from off his foot, and spit in his face, and shall answer and say, so shall it be done unto that man that will not build up his brother's house. And his name shall be called in Israel, the house of him that hath his shoe loosed. So, that was the law of that time, that if a man refused to be the kinsman redeemer, like the law says, that that would happen. She would take off his shoe, spit in his face. He would be considered dishonorable. But since this man and Boaz are discussing this, and Boaz is saying, if you don't want to redeem the land and marry Ruth, I will. So they're just having a conversation here, and there's no dishonor towards Ruth when the man says that I cannot redeem it. So Ruth does not spit in his face. But the man does take off his shoe, and that is a way of sealing the deal. He takes his shoe off, and it's like he is saying, I will not step foot on your property or what is yours. It was just a way of sealing the deal. So that was just their custom at the time. Now, verses 9 through 10. And Boaz said unto the elders and unto all the people, Ye are witnesses this day that I have bought all that was Elimelech's, and all that was Kilion's and Mahlon's of the hand of Naomi. Moreover, Ruth the Moabitess, the wife of Mahlon, have I purchased to be my wife, to raise up the name of the dead upon his inheritance, that the name of the dead be not cut off from among his brethren, and from the gate of his place. Ye are witnesses this day. So Boaz is proclaiming this in front of everybody, and it's not just a business deal to him. He loves Ruth, and his love for her is public, and he is telling everyone, I today am marrying Ruth. So I'm sure he was pretty excited, and everybody was excited for him. And if Ruth and Naomi were, like we kind of think they might have been watching from a distance, I'm sure they were very excited to see this happen. Verses 11 and 12. And all the people that were in the gate and the elders said, We are witnesses. The Lord make the woman that is come into thine house like Rachel and like Leah, which two did build the house of Israel, and do thou worthily in Ephratah, and be famous in Bethlehem. And let thy house be like the house of Pharez, whom Tamar bare unto Judah, of the seed which the Lord shall give thee of this young woman. So there's a lot of names mentioned in these verses. So they are actually putting a blessing on Ruth in verse 11 when it talks about Rachel and Leah. So Rachel and Leah are Jacob's wives, and between Rachel, Leah, and their maids, they have 12 sons who become the 12 tribes of Israel. So they are the mothers of the nation of Israel. So whenever they put the blessing on Ruth, that may you be like Rachel and Leah, may you have an abundance of children. They were the mother of Israel. So that was a really big blessing to put on Ruth. I just think it's amazing, first of all, that just not long ago, she was known as a Moabitish damsel, and I'm sure there was a lot of stigma that went with that. But now they know her as a virtuous woman, and they're putting this big blessing on her, Ruth, who is not of their nation, and they're saying, may you be like Rachel and Leah, who are the mothers of the nation of Israel. So it's just beautiful that they put that blessing on her. And verse 12 says, And let thy house be like the house of Pharez, whom Tamar bare unto Judah, of the seed which the Lord shall give thee of this young woman. And this kind of seems like just some random names, but if we look at who they are talking about, if we go back to Genesis 38, and I'll just give a quick summary. This, we could talk a whole day about this woman, but just a quick summary. Genesis 38. Okay, so we have Jacob and Leah's son, Judah. Now, Judah gives his son Tamar to marry. So Judah's son marries Tamar. Now, that man dies, and his brother marries Tamar. So we have the Levitical law, like we've been learning about, the kinsman redeemer. But that man dies as well. So Tamar marries Judah's son. He dies. She marries Judah's second son, and he dies. So, to carry on her deceased husband's name, Tamar tricks her father-in-law Judah into conceiving a child with her. They have twins, and one of them is Perez. That's who is mentioned in this verse in chapter 4:12 of Ruth. Now, this was another example of a woman who wasn't an Israelite being brought into the lineage of Jesus. So, without going into too much detail, just that quick little summary. Tamar is not a Jew, and she marries into a Jewish family, and we have the Levitical law with the kinsman redeemer happening there. Now, there are only a few women that are named in the lineage of Jesus, and Tamar is one of them. So, and we're going to find out later on, Ruth is also in the lineage of Jesus Christ. So I just love how it mentions Tamar whenever she wasn't a Jewish woman, and she is brought into the lineage of Jesus as well. Okay, so we're going to read verse 13. So Boaz took Ruth, and she was his wife, and when he went in unto her, the Lord gave her conception, and she bare a son. So Ruth was married to Mahlon for years, and they had no children, but it seems that Boaz and her quickly conceived. So sometimes there's a reason for the waiting, or for God to say not right now. Verse 14 and 15. And the women said unto Naomi, Blessed be the Lord, which hath not left thee this day without a kinsman, that his name may be famous in Israel. And he shall be unto thee a restorer of thy life, and a nourisher of thine old age. For thy daughter-in-law, which loveth thee, which is better to thee than 7 sons, hath borne him. So the women were happy for Naomi. The Lord has provided for Naomi a kinsman redeemer. And Ruth loves Naomi, and it's very obvious that Ruth loves Naomi. I mean, everyone can see that. And she's better to her than 7 sons. Verse 16 says, And Naomi took the child and laid it in her bosom and became nurse unto it. Naomi cared for the child as if it were her own. Verse 17, And the women, her neighbors, give it a name, saying, There is a son born to Naomi. And they called his name Obed. He is the father of Jesse, the father of David. Now Naomi has a son again. And let's go ahead and finish up the rest of the verses. So that would be chapter 4, verses 18 through 22. Now these are the generations of Perez. Perez begat Hezron, Hezron begat Ram, Ram begat Amminadab, Amminadab begat Nahshon, Nahshon begat Salmon, Salmon begat Boaz, Boaz begat Obed, Obed begat Jesse, and Jesse begat David. Now, someone asked, why did they randomly just throw in all of these names at the end of the Book of Ruth? This is to show us that this is not just a love story. This is not just a story of a kinsman redeemer. This is a story of redemption that leads to the true redeemer. So, Ruth and Boaz have Obed, and Obed has Jesse, and Jesse is the father of David who will later become king. And we know that Jesus Christ comes from that lineage. So Ruth and Boaz are the ancestors of Jesus Christ. And that is truly amazing. If you go to Matthew chapter 1, verses 1 through 17, it gives you that complete lineage of Jesus Christ, and you will see a lot of familiar names that we have been talking about. So the line of Boaz goes down to David, who would become a mighty warrior and king of Israel. Generations later, through this lineage comes Jesus Christ. The story of Ruth, like we said, is not just a love story. And it is a story of redemption. We have the kinsman redeemer, and their bloodline leads to the true redeemer, who is Jesus Christ. So I have 2 definitions of redemption here that we need to remember when we're reading the book of Ruth. So, the first one is the act of regaining possession of something in exchange for payment or clearing a debt. The second definition is the action of saving or being saved from sin. So we have both of those things going on in the book of Ruth. And this is just a little something that I read. I wrote and I read it to the women in our last meeting. And it's really hard to get that depth of emotion that we were feeling that day whenever we discussed this. We had such a good meeting. We listened to some songs and we just talked about what it means to be truly redeemed, because this story, when you look at it on the surface, oh, it's great, Boaz saves Ruth, but we have to remember what Ruth came from and how Boaz truly saved her. And Boaz was a kinsman redeemer, but we have a true redeemer in Jesus Christ who can completely change our story. We don't have to be who we once were. And when you meet the Lord and He truly changes your heart, you are not the same person. So I'm just going to read this, what I read that day. Boaz was a kinsman redeemer for Ruth. He saved her land, saved her from poverty, and saved her from being a childless widow. In this city of Bethlehem, we see a foreshadowing of what is to come with Jesus. Jesus Christ is our true Redeemer. He paid a debt for us when He died on the cross for our sins, and He saved us. Have you ever been like Naomi, a widow, or grieving over the loss of a child? You feel as if God's hand is against you, and your pleasantness has turned to bitterness. Just hold on. We see Naomi had a friend in Ruth, and Naomi returns to her homeland and to God like the prodigal son. God blesses Naomi with another child, and Ruth is better to Naomi than 7 sons. Do you feel like Ruth, who was also a widow and childless, feeling as if you are losing everything but taking the risk to go to a new land where you are a stranger and you're not sure what lies ahead? Maybe you are waiting on your Boaz. Just hold on. Ruth was redeemed. She was adopted in as one of God's people. Though she was a foreigner and known as a Moabitish damsel, her label was changed and she was a virtuous woman, the ancestor of Jesus. So, I think that's beautiful. I love every bit of the story of Ruth. And I love the stories of people who have met Jesus Christ and who they once were and who they were, what they were known as is completely different when they meet the Lord. And we may not understand why we are going through what we are going through. We don't understand why we are waiting or why we are suffering, why we have to grieve. But God, if we follow Him and trust in Him like Ruth did, He can turn our stories into something just so beautiful, just absolutely so beautiful. And that is the best story ever. Like, who doesn't love that whenever someone is redeemed? And we can all be redeemed. I have been redeemed. I'm not who I once was, and thank God for it. Truly, thank God for it, because He's the one that did this. He's the one that changed everything about me. And I'm so thankful that we have a Redeemer in Christ. And if you don't know Jesus and you haven't been redeemed, take that step. Get to know Him. He is there waiting on you, and He loves you so much.